Here's a question worth chewing on. What does a billionaire actually buy when money has stopped meaning anything? A bigger swimming pool? A second helicopter pad? Or a 45,000 square foot palace tucked behind a wall of imported cypress trees? Welcome to Beverly Hills and the rolling hillsides that surround it. A patch of California where the asking price for a single bedroom can outrun the lifetime earnings of an entire small town. The mansions you are about to walk through aren't simply houses. They are private kingdoms, complete with their own museums, vineyards, theaters, salons, security forces, and in at least one case, a literal moat. They are where pop stars become landowners, where tech founders behave like medieval dukes, and where one estate can quietly trade hands for the price of an aircraft carrier. The neighborhoods you'll be visiting include the Beverly Hills postcode itself and the Platinum Triangle that wraps around it, the rarefied stretch of Bel Air, Holmby Hills, and Beverly Park where most of America's nine-figure homes actually sit. So pour yourself something expensive, settle in, and let's count down 10 of the most outrageous billionaire-grade mansions inside this stretch of California. We're starting at number 10, and trust me, by the time we get to number 1, you may need a moment. Number 10. Behind a guarded second gate inside the most heavily fortified neighborhood in Beverly Park, a 6-acre Moroccan-inspired compound stretches across a ridgeline that catches the late afternoon sun straight on. Hand-painted tiles climb the walls of a central courtyard built around a fountain. There's a 5-hole golf course out back, a basketball gym tall enough to host a real game, a screening room, a wine cellar that disappears underground, and enough garage space to embarrass a small dealership. The estate runs roughly 30,000 square feet of finished living, which sounds like a number until you remember that most American homes are smaller than the master bedroom alone. The man behind that ridge was actor and producer Mark Wahlberg. He spent nearly a decade building it out, the way a director builds a film set, obsessing over every doorknob, every tile run, every sightline. When he listed it ahead of relocating his family to Las Vegas, the price tag rocked even the local agents. He eventually parted with it well below his original ask, but that's the strange physics of trophy real estate. At this altitude, the word discount still describes a number larger than the gross domestic product of some Caribbean nations. The neighbors here, by the way, include other A-list actors, denim moguls, professional athletes, and one or two people whose fortunes you've never heard of and never will. That's the trick of Beverly Park. The wealth on this hillside is so dense that even the famous tenants are sometimes the poorer half of the cul-de-sac. Number 9. Imagine a Mediterranean revival fortress sitting on 6 prime acres a few minutes from Rodeo Drive, with 29 bedrooms, 3 swimming pools, an ornate 2-story library carved from imported wood, and a private nightclub that has hosted movie stars across nearly every era of Hollywood. The property is known to locals as the Beverly House, and to historians as the Hearst Estate. It was bought decades ago by the legendary newspaper Baron William Randolph Hearst, who used it as a Southern California base for himself and the actress Marion Davies. Since then, it has been a movie set, a presidential honeymoon location for John and Jacqueline Kennedy, and a frequent backdrop in films you've definitely watched. Walk the corridors and you may find yourself in scenes you recognize from The Godfather and The Bodyguard. The current ownership has changed hands among collectors of trophy property over the years, and the asking price has at times pushed past 9 figures, occasionally landing among the highest residential listings ever placed in the United States. What makes the Beverly House interesting isn't really its size, although the gross square footage rivals a mid-size art museum. It's the gravity of the place. You're not buying a house here. You're buying a room in the cultural memory of 20th century America, with the smell of old pages and old cigars baked into the walls. Some buildings host history. This one rents it out by the weekend, and the going rate would feed a small country. Number 8. Across the city line on the far edge of Holmby Hills, a single roof covers more than 56,000 square feet of finished living space. There's a bowling alley. There's a beauty salon. There's a separate gift wrapping room, which is exactly what it sounds like. A dedicated suite where staff can wrap presents at industrial scale during the holidays. The estate is known simply as the Manor, and when it was first built by the late television producer Aaron Spelling and his wife Candy, it set a record as the largest private home in Los Angeles County. After Spelling's passing, the estate eventually traded to Petra Ecclestone, the daughter of British motorsport billionaire Bernie Ecclestone, in a deal widely reported to be among the largest residential transactions ever recorded in the city. Petra was barely out of her early 20s when she signed the paperwork, which gives you a sense of how surreal the wealth pipeline can be at the very top. She poured a small fortune into renovating the property, and later relisted it at an even higher number. Inside, the rooms feel less like a home and more like wings of a private museum with marble flooring, painted ceilings, and a sweeping double staircase that exists mainly to be photographed. There are roughly 123 rooms depending on how you count, and a service tunnel system designed so that staff can move between zones without ever crossing the family's path. Most owners spend years just learning where the light switches are. Number 7. A Gothic Tudor stone mansion sits on 5 oak-shaded acres just down the road from the manor, with secret passages, an underground grotto, a private zoo licensed to keep monkeys and exotic birds, and a swimming pool whose silhouette became one of the most recognized shapes in 20th century pop culture. You already know this one. It's the Playboy Mansion. For decades, it was the home of Hugh Hefner, the magazine founder whose name became shorthand for a certain era of Hollywood after hours. Following Hefner's passing, the property passed to his next-door neighbor, the food industry investor Darren Metropolis, in a transaction reported in the $100 million range. The mansion was old by then, frankly worn down by years of round-the-clock parties and event use, and the new owner reportedly committed to a meticulous, multi-year restoration. What's fascinating is what the property actually represents financially. The land alone, sitting on a rare double lot inside one of the most restricted zoning maps in Southern California, is what carried the price. The buildings could vanish tomorrow and the dirt would still be worth a fortune. That is one of the quiet truths of Beverly Hills and its surrounding enclaves. You aren't paying for the house. You're paying for the impossibility of anyone else ever building near you again. Privacy, at this level, is the actual luxury, and the Playboy Mansion's landlocked silence is something even billionaires have to wait in line behind a velvet rope to access. Number 6. Picture a French neoclassical chateau perched above the city like a transplant from the Loire Valley, with its own working vineyard producing private label wine, an 11,000-square-foot ballroom decorated for diplomats, and a long, curving driveway that spills onto roughly 25 rolling acres of mowed lawn. This is Chartwell, sometimes simply called the Bel Air estate, and it sits at the very top of the hill overlooking Beverly Hills. Television viewers of a certain generation know it as the establishing shot mansion from a famous 1960s sitcom about a hillbilly family who struck oil and moved to a fancy zip code. In real life, it has been owned by titans, and most recently it was reported to have changed hands between 2 well-known media families in a transaction that briefly held the title of the most expensive home sale in American history. The figure was widely reported in the neighborhood of $150 million. To put that into perspective, that's enough money to fund a small university endowment, build a new hospital wing, or buy several professional sports franchises in lower-tier leagues. Instead, it bought one family the right to walk through 25,000 square feet of historic architecture and look out at the lights of Los Angeles from a private terrace. The chateau also sits inside a residential microzone where helicopters routinely circle to film the lawns. From the air, Chartwell doesn't quite look like a house. It looks like a country. Number 5. Now imagine a 4-story modern fortress carved into the side of Bel Air, finished in glass and bronze, with a candy-colored sweets shop installed on one level, a bowling alley installed on another, a movie theater fit for a small film festival, a fleet of luxury cars parked indoors as decoration, and a private helicopter perched on the roof for atmosphere. This was the spec mansion built by handbag fortune entrepreneur turned developer Bruce Makowski, listed for an audacious $250 million when it first hit the market. Spec houses are properties developers build without a buyer in mind, betting that someone, somewhere on Earth, will eventually want exactly what they imagined. Makowski's bet was that there is at least one person on the planet for whom even the absurd luxury already inside Beverly Hills isn't enough, who would want a fully furnished, fully staffed, ready-to-move-in fantasy with the cars and the chef and the helicopter included as part of the deal. The home eventually traded for substantially less than the original ask, but the saga said something important about the ceiling of the market. The price tags at this tier are not really about square footage or material. They are about narrative. The buyer is paying for a story they can tell themselves about who they are. This estate was a story written in marble and bronze, and the moral was simple. There is no top floor at the very top. Number 4. On a quiet street tucked into Bel Air, behind walls that block almost every line of sight, a contemporary mansion stretches across nearly 40,000 square feet of glass and concrete and floats above 6 bedrooms, more than a dozen bathrooms, a basketball court, 4 outdoor pools, and a spa worthy of a luxury resort. It was reported to have traded for around $200 million, making it one of the most expensive residential purchases in Californian history. The buyers, according to widely circulated reports, were the music and business power couple Jay-Z and Beyoncé. Both built their fortunes from scratch, in industries famous for chewing up the talent inside them. Both have spent the last 2 decades pivoting into ownership, equity, and brand control across music, sports, fashion, and spirits. Their decision to plant a flag at this altitude wasn't a vanity move. It was a balance sheet decision. At a certain level of wealth, raw cash starts losing to inflation, and a trophy property in a supply-restricted zip code becomes one of the safest stores of value on the planet. The home itself is sleek, modern, and almost monastic by the standards of this list, with sharp lines instead of marble curves, and a quietness that suits people whose private lives are otherwise on every screen in the world. It is also, almost certainly, a generational asset. Decades from now, when this neighborhood is even more constricted than it is today, that estate will still be standing, and so will the family name on the deed, passed quietly to the next generation. Number 3. Now picture 9 acres in the actual Beverly Hills postcode, a Georgian-style main house from the 1930s designed for a Hollywood studio chief, terraced gardens running down the hillside, a tennis court, a 9-hole golf course, multiple guest houses, and infrastructure quietly upgraded for a level of security that would feel appropriate around a head of state. This is the Warner Estate, named for the entertainment mogul who once owned it, and later associated with the legendary record executive David Geffen before it changed hands again in a sale widely reported to be one of the largest residential transactions ever recorded in the United States. The buyer was reported to be the founder of one of the world's largest e-commerce companies, Jeff Bezos. The price tag floated past $160 million, which was, in his case, a barely visible rounding error on his net worth. What is interesting about the Warner Estate is that it is not a flashy property in the traditional sense. There is no glass tower. There is no carved sweets shop. The exterior could pass for a particularly well-kept private school. The luxury here is older, quieter, and more institutional, the kind of luxury that signals you're not climbing toward old money. You've quietly become it. The estate also sits inside one of the few flat patches of usable land in central Beverly Hills, which is its own kind of prestige. Almost every other mega mansion on this list clings to a hillside or balances on a ridge. This one simply has room. Number 2. Above the 8th fairway of one of Los Angeles' most exclusive country clubs sits an 8-acre property crowned by a roughly 40,000-square-foot mansion, finished with sweeping lawns, formal rose gardens, hand-laid marble floors, and a roster of previous owners that reads like a private index of 20th-century American capitalism. The estate is called Casa Encantada, which translates roughly to the Enchanted House, and it has been the trophy of choice for hotel kings, food industry tycoons, and media billionaires across multiple generations. The original ask, when it most recently traded among the country's wealthiest, set headlines around the world for cracking past the $250 million mark in residential property. To stand on the back terrace of Casa Encantada is to stand at the actual financial summit of the city. The interior boasts a marble entrance hall lit by a chandelier so heavy it required engineered structural support, a ballroom designed to comfortably host political fundraisers, and bathrooms with fittings that were custom fabricated rather than purchased from any catalog. What sets Casa Encantada apart on this list isn't simply the square footage. Several other estates here are larger. It's the lineage. Each owner has been someone whose decisions moved entire industries. The house has hosted private negotiations, dinners, and quiet conversations that probably shaped the trajectory of major American companies. When you buy something like Casa Encantada, you aren't joining the rich. You're joining a sequence, and there are far fewer seats in that sequence than there are zeros in your bank account. Number 1. And finally, on a hilltop above Bel Air with one of the most jealously guarded views in all of Los Angeles, sits the property that essentially broke the rulebook for what a single-family home is allowed to be. Picture more than 105,000 square feet of finished space, 21 bedrooms, dozens of bathrooms, multiple swimming pools cascading across the terraces, a moat circling the structure, a nightclub built into the building, a beauty salon, a wellness spa, a 4-lane bowling alley, a dedicated gallery wing, and parking for dozens of vehicles. This is the property that became known publicly as The One, conceived and developed by the polarizing Los Angeles producer turned developer Niall Niami. From the moment the design hit local zoning files, the project was treated as a kind of architectural moonshot. Niami's stated dream was to build the most expensive single-family home ever sold in the United States. And at one point he floated an asking price approaching $500 million. The reality, as is often the case with hubris at this scale, was harsher. The project ran years, and reportedly hundreds of millions of dollars past its budget, the financing fractured, and the property eventually went to auction, where it sold for a fraction of the original target. Even at that discount, the final sale price still ranked among the highest residential transactions in California history. The One stands today as a monument to the ceiling of mega mansion ambition, a kind of architectural Icarus on a cliff. It is the proof in concrete and glass that you can in fact build a house too big to actually sell at the price you imagined. And yet for the family that eventually moved in, it is simply home, with elevators that smell faintly of leather, hallways that take real time to walk, and a view that goes on for as long as the smog is willing to let it. From a Moroccan compound on a Beverly Park ridge to a $500 million megastructure that nearly broke its own developer, the homes hidden inside this stretch of California prove something a little uncomfortable. At a certain altitude of wealth, a house stops being a place to live and quietly turns into a balance sheet asset, a status flare, and a personal monument all at once. So which of these next-level mansions surprised you the most? The chateau on the hill with its private vineyard? The spec house with the helicopter on the roof? Or the quiet estate that traded hands for the price of a public company? Drop your pick down in the comments and tell us who you think actually got the best deal. If you enjoyed walking these driveways with us, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the lifestyles of the global ultra-wealthy, and we'll see you in the next one.